This is really great to see names of former classmates, and then at the same time to also get to meet some new people here today. So my name is Amanda Sabula. I'm the past president for Wildcats Leadership for Life. Ben Fenwick is also on the line. He's the current president, and he was in and out today with the phone. So I was just going to welcome all of you. It's great to have you participating. Wildcats Leadership for Life is an alumni organization, alumni and friends organization for the School of Leadership Studies. There was a group of us about 3 years ago who started realizing that we really wanted ways that we could keep connecting with the School of Leadership Studies because people have left such a big imprint on us. And yet we didn't necessarily know what that looked like. So Wildcats Leadership for Life was born. And from there, we now have a mentoring program that we get alumni who are interested in mentoring some current students. We also are getting ready to plan our first social. We're very active in the Spirit of Leadership event each fall. And then this is our next experiment today to have a professional development opportunity available for our alumni. So Mary Kay has graciously agreed to be our presenter today. And if you have questions, you can check out the website or feel free to contact anybody that you see on there. But I think that's it. So thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate the offer to be with you today, and I'm glad so many of you are joining us for this webinar. I want to also acknowledge Tamara's help. So, Tamara, you want to say a few words about what your role is today?
Yes, I would. I'm hoping to experiment positively with this technology that you're all experiencing called Zoom. And I'm hoping for a way that we really can build community with one another. It's really fun to see the names and faces of people that we've been able to interact with over the years. So we look forward to the time together and hope that this is of use. The other thing I would invite is that we would love feedback on future ways that you all might want to connect with the school and what other opportunities now with technology we might be able to utilize. So I will be kind of hosting the event, and so if you'll notice, Mary Kay will walk through a few of our, I guess, rules when it comes to using Zoom so that you feel like you have control over what you're listening to, what you want to share. And I know in just a minute we're going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, so I have the capacity, I guess, to unmute everyone, and then I'll mute you back later as we get going. So welcome.
All right. Thanks, Tamara. So what are our expectations today? Well, all of you have been in a leadership class, so you know that we consider this a learning community. And I hope that today we can somehow figure out how to make this webinar a learning community and learn from so just as a reminder, we believe that knowledge is co-constructed, and so we're all responsible.
Tamara, do you want to go ahead and mute everyone?
And then Mary Kay, just unmute yourself, please. There we go. You see where to click.
Okay. Okay, so we were getting a little feedback on my end, but basically we're all a community of learners, so nothing different from when you left the School of Leadership Studies. We're still going to move forward with this webinar today with that same idea that we're responsible for each other's learning. And so we have some norms, and so I chose this photo on the right of the slide, and I think some of you are going to see yourselves in this photo, but basically it's we always have an end of the semester party, kind of a I guess you could call it an ugly holiday sweater party. And if you don't follow the norms, we made you stand in the front for the photo. So just like today, if you don't follow the norms, we might call you out in some way or another. But what we'd like for you to do today is to participate. So to pose a question or comment during the webinar, either by unmuting your microphone and just shouting out a question, or the chat box. And I'm going to turn to my tech specialist here for a minute. Shelly, how do they find their chat box on this?
Their chat box should be at the bottom of their screen.
So at the
black bar.
At the bottom of your screen is a black bar
That says chat.
that says chat.
And you can click on that and it should pop up a chat window.
And at the bottom of your screen is a black bar that says chat, and it should pop up a chat window. So and I'm going to ask Tamara to monitor that.
Mm-hmm.
And Tamara, how's that going? Is the chat box open on yours?
Yep, we are conversing. Keith reminded us about the ugly sweater that he still owns from this photo. So.
Okay. So the other thing is to say your name and location so we can build community that way. And Tamara has put everybody on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to speak. The other thing is we're recording this, and hopefully we can use this in the future. And I will share my slide deck with you in the future if you'd like. So the way that I'll work through this today is I want to reorient or orient everyone to the current status of the School of Leadership Studies and really where we are today. I know some of you have been gone more than 10 years, some of you just a year or two. So I want to make sure we're on the same page about leadership studies. The second thing, orient you to why we have chosen adaptive leadership. And we basically use adaptive leadership. We teach it in our third core course, Leadership and Practice, but we also use it in our own learning community with our faculty, with our staff, with our programs, and I'll talk about this in a minute. And then introduce you to some basic concepts, of adaptive leadership. I'll always want to stop for questions. And I'm going to provide a few slides, some more retro than others. This slide is from Candy Hironaka's retirement party, I believe in 2012. See, I can't remember. I've forgotten already. So, Keith, you're 2 for 2 already in our retro slides. I don't know how that's happened. But anyway, so Shelly, I'm going to ask you to come over here and show the chat box for me. So I'm asking my tech person, Shelly, to come over here so that I can see the chat box as well.
And then currently you will be sending it to everyone. If you just want to send an individual, you pick it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Shelly. So great. So here we go. So everybody knows our mission. It's changed a little bit from when we started, but basically we approach our mission through 3 ways. We have an academic minor. We have a learning community that involves students, instructors, staff members. So we see anybody involved with the School of Leadership Studies as a learning community, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're downstairs in the reception area, whether you're in the coffee shop and we're interacting. We value a learning community. So an interdisciplinary minor, a learning community, and then we have programming or applied learning. And we take all 3 of those and believe that we educate students and educate ourselves through all 3 of those avenues. Just to give you an idea, really, numbers-wise, you'll see the students that are part of leadership studies. We have about 2,500. That changes on any given day. That's why we can't give you an exact number. So it's about 2,500. And you'll see about half of those are in our leadership minor. So about half in the minor and about half in programming. So you can see the importance that we play on the programming aspect, the out of classroom work that we do with students in leadership development. Now, the bottom 3 lines, you're going to see some numbers cross through. And the reason for that is right now we have a proposal in Faculty Senate, And look at this. Is this fancy that I'm highlighting that? Yeah, everybody who knows my technology level knows that what I just did is amazing. But anyway, we have a proposal in Faculty Senate right now. We're actually going to reduce the number of hours required for the minor from 18 to 16. And the reason for that is that, I'll explain it on the next page actually a little better, but we have 4 core courses, which in the past made up 9 hours, but we're gonna, instead of 9 hours, we're gonna require students to take 10 hours with us. So we're actually increasing the number of hours by 1 hour that students have to take with us through our core courses. And instead of taking 3 electives from across campus, we're gonna reduce that number to 2. Shelly is in the background telling me how to do this, by the way. So basically what we have here is our 4 core courses. So Intro to Leadership Concepts is still 2 credit hours. Culture and Context is 3. Leadership and Practice, which is where we teach adaptive leadership, is 2. And Senior Seminars, where the change is occurring. So what we're doing is we're taking an elective, Ethical Dimensions of Leadership, and embedding that in the Senior Seminar. And the reason for that is what we found out is we were really duplicating a lot of the content between Senior Seminar and Ethical Dimensions. So we have combined those 2 courses into one. And so basically what that's going to look like then is we have 10 core hours they have to take with us, and then 6 elective hours. In the nonprofit focus, those elective hours are decided for them. They have no options there. So that's where we are with our minor right now. We're going from an 18-hour credit minor down to a 16 credit hour minor, but more of those hours will actually be within the School of Leadership Studies. Again, applied learning, we have a lot of opportunities for students outside the classroom, and I'm sure a lot of you have participated in these. The picture on the right is a student named Taylor Schmidt. He was on an international service team trip to Kenya. That's probably one of our most impactful student programming efforts, and they would use a lot of the adaptive leadership philosophies in how they prepare their students to go on these service teams, and then how they debrief with those students once they come back. So I'll stop right here, turn your mic on. I've done all the talking to this point, and I know that I'm tired of hearing myself talk. So I'm going to ask Tamara to share some ideas, and the rest of you just to share some thoughts, interpretations that you might have at this point.
Who's going to be the first to talk? It's like back in class again.
I knew Tamara would talk first. I can wait forever. I knew Tamara would chime in. So I'm going to ask somebody to...
I'll go. It's Casey.
Okay.
So, Mary Kay, it's Casey Carlson in Boston. I turned on my video for a moment, but I'm eating lunch and signing my name on immigration petitions right now. So I just wanted to make 2 comments. So for everyone I haven't met, I guess I'm the past president, I don't know what I am, of the Leadership Studies Advancement Council, but I'm also the first graduate from the program. I've decided to just claim that honor. And so I'm beyond thrilled today that we're having this chance to start building this community. Amanda and the team have worked hard to do it, and Tamara's always supporting it. But I'm excited that we're extending this conversation into, you know, our grown-up lives post-college, and starting to think about, you know, how do we stay connected to the topic? Because certainly day in and day out, it's easy to put some of those amazing conversations that we had in school on the shelf, and just just listening to the words that have already been used today, I said, oh yeah, this is what we were focused on and what we all wanted to study, and this is a good thing. So that's my 2 cents to start this off, and I am just thrilled that we're having this time together.
Well, thank you, Casey, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing the work that you're doing. How about some other comments?
And we have a few people sharing by chat because I know that maybe microphones don't work, or where your location is, it's easier to not do this looking at a camera. So it's fun to be able to watch down there. Has everyone found their chat feature okay?
I'd like to chime in just a second. I really liked the idea that more students are going to be in the leadership stage school more for the minor than outside of the school with the adjustment of their credit hours. I think that's a really great move, especially focusing more on the senior seminar.
Yeah, I agree, Keith. And really that's feedback from students. They were having a good experience in ethical dimensions of leadership with Dr. Shoup. Dr. Toller teaches it now, Dr. Mary Toller, our director. And feedback from students drives our program as always. So we listen to students, and they wanted more time in the school. And so we respond to that. By the way, Dr. Toller, it was just announced that she's received tenure with Kansas State University. So we're excited for Mary for that and the hard work that she's put in. She is a wonderful director, and we're very lucky to have her at Leadership Studies. Very fortunate. Okay, so let's move on. So I wanted to include this photo of Intro to Leadership Concepts with Mike. We still throw the fish, okay? We throw a real fish, and, you know, Tamara, why don't you tell your story a little bit? We teach Intro to Leadership Concepts. We're experimenting with a spring large section, and we had ordered a fish. Tamara, tell us what happened to the fish.
Well, we got a call from Hy-Vee that morning that said that the large, you know, like 16, 17-pound salmon didn't come in. So I got about a 2-pound, I don't know, I think they called it like a guppy fish. It was one that we could like fling, you know, anywhere we wanted to in the classroom. But needless to say, I'm not sure that it had quite the same effect as the large, big salmon that people wanted to touch. So it was kind of funny.
Tamara has taken over the coordination of our intro class. Mike has done it for several years, and Mike needs a break. So Tamara, why don't you take a few minutes and tell us what the status of intro is right now?
Yeah. Well, we, as you can see on the slide, we serve about 900 first semester freshmen in the fall. And then in the spring, we have 200 students that are very diverse in age range and experience. We have several full-time K-State employees and staff that are taking the class. And so the needs, I think, from the first semester to the spring semester are something that are continuing to evolve, and we're learning as we go. All of you probably remember collecting cans as part of the Cats for Cans food drive for the Flint Hills Breadbasket. This fall, we have enhanced what that work is by creating it into a service learning opportunity where freshmen study the issue of hunger as it relates to exercising leadership. Their direct service component is the can collection, which provides them the opportunity to get outside the classroom, get to know the Manhattan community, have some of those, I guess, experiences together in building community outside the classroom. But then they come back and have critical reflection opportunities about where leadership is needed in an issue like hunger that has no easy solution. We feel like this is going to provide a great foundation for how we exercise leadership around these big adaptive challenges, so that when they get to Lead 405 and learn more about the adaptive leadership philosophy, which is what Mary Kay will talk about, they've had a neat grounding experience in that. This fall, we have 75 class leaders, which is the most we've ever had before. We had our first training at 7:30 in the morning on Wednesday, and this afternoon we have a Peer Leader Institute with other peer mentors across campus, and we're excited to move forward. So thank you for all of you who are former class leaders. It's definitely a powerful experience and learning, I think, for them, but also for the instructors and with the students.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. Culture and Context of Leadership, our second core course. Basically, we talk about privilege issues there. We certainly want students to come out of culture and context with their own sense of privilege and power, social identities, and how they can practice inclusive leadership for the common good. In intro, we kind of give them what I use the analogy of, we take a big paintbrush and we're painting a broad stroke about leadership in that course. And when we get them in culture and context, then it's a smaller class, about 40 students in that class, and then we start to challenge them on who they are, their identities, and how culture has influenced them. So it's a challenging course. I love teaching culture and context. It's probably where I feel most home in the School of Leadership Studies. This slide that you see here, Chance Lee, some of you may remember Chance. He was an undergraduate in our program. He's now an instructor with us, and he's leading an exercise we do. We've done it for a long time. In fact, my guess is some of you class leaders probably led this privilege walk, and he's outside in the grass across the street from the leadership building, and working through an exercise so that students understand privilege and what kind of privilege they have. But for me, this is where my heart is in leadership studies. So that prepares the students then. What we've done with them, I wanted to give you the context then of why we chose adaptive leadership. After we give them that broad brushstroke in intro, we try to get them to think about their own cultural identities, their sense of privilege in culture and context, and now leadership and practice. So the idea is they're juniors. They have a couple of years experience at K-State. And I think really, in my mind, what we're asking them to do now as a junior is to change their behavior. So we're asking them to actually to go out and lead and use leadership behaviors. And I love this quote by Lily Tomlin, and it's really, I think, what this class is about. It's not that we're expecting somebody else to do it, and usually the somebody else is authority. We always say, why don't they? And typically we're talking about authority. So our goal in this class is to think that I don't have to rely on authority, that I can exercise leadership. We started this experiment in 2010. We call it an experiment. When we moved into the building, we said, let's go all in adaptive leadership in 405. Now, I'm going to show you a couple. Actually, this is from Mike Finnegan's syllabus. And Mike is experimenting. Mike really lives, as do many of us here, the concepts of adaptive leadership. So he's experimenting with his syllabus on a different type of course design for leadership and practice. So he is first identifying some course objectives from an academic lens. All right, but he didn't stop there. He then is saying, okay, I want my students also to think about how I want them to act civically. So how I want them to engage in the civic arena. So it's not enough for us to learn about leadership. That now we want our students to, in our communities, maybe it's their living organization, maybe it's their family, maybe it's the local Boys and Girls Club, but we want them to exercise leadership in a civic arena. And then, of course, in their personal lives as well. So just the way that Mike has laid out his course objectives is really a testament both to the content of adaptive leadership, which isn't as important at this point, but the reason I shared this with you, I think it shows that Mike is experimenting. All right, he's trying to figure out ways to help students learn and to help them change their behaviors to exercise leadership. We use the book, The Practice of Adaptive Leadership by Ron Heifetz and friends at Harvard, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Kansas Leadership Center. And Amanda, it's where you're working. And Amanda, I might ask you to say a few words about that, but it was really the work of the Kansas Leadership Center. Mary Toller and I, Irma Odell, Tamara, a lot of people, Mike, have gone down there, and they've helped us develop our capacity, I think, to engage our students in a different way. So Amanda, would you just take a couple minutes to tell us about the role of the Kansas Leadership Center?
Sure, Mary, thanks. So the Kansas Leadership Center, we are really focused on helping to foster healthier Kansas communities. We have principles and competencies and all kinds of things that I'm sure that you could hear about, but really we base most of our thinking off of this practice of adaptive leadership that you're going to share with us. I think that other than that, we're always excited to share with people, to work with people. As we talk about creating healthier Kansas communities, one of the things that I think is the most exciting to me is the opportunity that it's not just about doing that from a civic sense, but we focus on all areas. So we look at the business arena, we have a legislators program, we have issue-specific programs, and then we have programs just in general. So we're really all about changing the culture of Kansas and getting people on board to do that with us.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Mary.
Let's just take a moment and stop for questions before I get into really what is adaptive leadership. Are there any questions at this point or comments? Tamara, anything you want to add? Okay, so really what is adaptive leadership? It's going to take a while to, I think, figure this out. I'm still trying to figure out really what it is and how to do it and how to make sense of this. But when you think about adaptive leadership, it really is getting people to tackle tough challenges. And we're going to talk in a few minutes about what's a tough challenge. We're going to make that distinction. First, you have to think we're smart people, we're capable, and if the solution were simple and we had the know-how to tackle the tough challenge, because we're smart people, we probably would have done it by now. So when we talk about tough challenges, you have to think about it just in that. These are complex challenges that we don't have the know-how really how to address those challenges. And then not only to address the challenge, but to thrive. So what that takes to mobilize people to tackle tough challenges and then to thrive, it takes change. And this little icon I have over here, this little person stepping on change, and I like it that it's turning red, because I think when you ask people to change, I think there's a little heat involved. And everybody says, we want change, let's change. But when we actually ask, when it comes time to change, we're not so sure we're really in if you're asking me to change and maybe give up some things that I've known. So the first thing we have to do is distinguish technical from adaptive. So a technical challenge is if I break my leg, I go to a doctor, the doctor's the expert, there's a known challenge, my leg is broken, the doctor fixes my leg, it's healed. Okay, so the problem is known, there's an expert to fix it, and the expert knows how to fix it. That's a technical challenge. We are not talking about technical challenges in adaptive leadership. We're talking about adaptive challenges. So I have the picture of the heart. Maybe think about heart disease. So if I have heart disease, okay, the problem might be known. Yeah, it might be your diet, might be your exercise, it could be hereditary, it could be a lot of things, all right? But it's probably going to take a change of behavior on my part to fix the problem. Now, the issue is the way I've been behaving, maybe not eating the way I should, maybe not exercising the way I should, has worked really well for me in some way, right? I mean, I like going to Taco Lucha and Kites and Hibachi Hut, some of those places some of you like going, right? I like going there and eating. And instead of going to the rec center, I kind of like to go home and watch reruns of Breaking Bad or Criminal Minds or whatever. So it's going to take a change on my part. Okay, that's why adaptive challenges are so difficult. The expert can say this is what you need to do, but unless I change, it doesn't work. So we're going to focus on adaptive challenges to think about it. So really in adaptive work, you have a gap, all right? So you have your current reality, and if you think about this person over here, that's your current reality. That's where you are. And there's a gap between where you are and what you want to be. So my current reality maybe is that I have heart disease. My aspiration is that I'm a healthy person. Well, the gap is, how do I change my behavior to get there? So a lot of times in adaptive leadership, we talk about a gap. And the issue is that we don't always know how to get there. Now you might say, well, Mary Kay, just exercise and eat right. Well, I'm a smart person. I know that, right? I know exercise, eat right, lose weight, okay? So you see about the expertise doesn't always work. There's something else that's causing the problem and causing us not to move from one side to the next side. That's what we call the gap. So one of the things we have to think about in adaptive leadership, really, now again, we're talking about adaptive problems. There are no easy solutions. Sometimes we don't even know what the problem is. So the first thing that you do in adaptive leadership is you diagnose the system, all right? You have to figure out the system. Now I'm going to tell you what, our tendency is to jump to action because that's sort of what we're rewarded for. And isn't it amazing? Don't you think we have this in our culture that we have this this sort of norm that we reward experts and we reward people who come in and fix problems fast and that come in and say, I can help you. You just need to do this, 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 and this. Well, sometimes we call that the Band-Aid approach. And that may solve the problem in the short term, but that may not really be what, we may be putting a Band-Aid on something, but the problem doesn't go away. So in adaptive leadership, we need to spend a lot of time on diagnosing and less time really thinking about what the action is. So I'm just going to kind of pause right here a minute, and I'm going to ask for Tamara, maybe Amanda, to come in and, or anybody else out there. I don't want to just limit it to Amanda and Tamara. Now, as I'm here, I can't keep up on all the comments, so I'm going to ask other people to chime in as well, maybe some of your own experiences. So I'm going to kind of stop here and let's have some interaction. Sure.
I think one way that may help us think through, this is Tamara, I think one way that may help us think through adaptive challenges that we might be facing or that we recognize would be to share some of those. Keith provided a great example in the chat box about, it sounds like it could be an easy system to implement to coordinate and streamline projects and people. But as he, further explains the situation, that there's a lot of diagnosing about, I would say, values, organizational culture, probably beliefs that have been held because of past experiences, and thinking about making changes within that is very difficult, which may indicate that this is an adaptive challenge. So I'd invite you, is anyone else thinking that, and I think adaptive challenges, when I was first thinking about it, sometimes it's easy to think about ones that I may personally be facing, or where I see them on the systemic level.
Well, kind of mentioning, or what I had mentioned in the chat box, we have about 4,500 people managers at Sprint, and I'm charged with the group of people that are for the executive development. And so we try and focus on getting our executives to be open to allowing change to happen, because it's the only way we're going to move forward. And being in a rut for so many years on not making big changes, it's trying to open people's eyes to thinking about making different changes and being okay with that. And it's proving to be something a little bit of a challenge.
So you're talking about being okay with sort of being in the discomfort of change?
Kind of being within the discomfort and allowing new things to happen, and being okay with a little uncertainty for a little while, because we've been in such a perfectionist mode for so long. And sometimes it's okay to be mediocre, to start something new and improve on it. But people are just with anything, they're not used to change. They don't like it, and it's hard to get good leaders to be able to be okay with that change, and leading it is what's the hard part.
Yeah, one of the things when we talk about change is that there's loss for people. So whenever we have change, somebody's going to give up something. And a lot of times that's what you have to address, is the loss that people are going to experience.
Yeah, one of the biggest things we work on is change management, which is very similar to what we're talking about here. And people don't put enough emphasis on it because they think it's some of those soft skills, very similar to leadership. They think it's a soft skill, that it's not worth the money to put into it. But it's going to cost you much more if you don't put these adaptive leadership principles into place.
Mm-hmm. How about some other comments? And it's okay if you're on the phone, or even if we can't see you, it's okay to unmute your microphone even if your video's not on.
Mary Kay, it's Casey again. I would just share that I think there's a true sort of constant dilemma between the two kinds of efforts, because I really believe that good, strong organizations want to be adaptive and are saying all of the right words and trying to do the right things. But whether it's financial constraints or people constraints, we spend a lot of time on Band-Aids. And I know for me, just finding the space to step back and think about the adaptive piece is often hard, because I'm spending so much time reacting and dealing with whatever is current and sort of the loudest. And that's one of those challenges. I've been out of school for a while now, and that's remained consistent. And I think the pace of work has only increased over my time outside of K-State.
So you continue to feel pressure to put the Band-Aids on and not diagnose the situation.
Well, I think I feel pressure to do both, but if there's only 24 hours in a day, you spend a lot of time with those Band-Aids.
Right, right.
Yeah, Casey, you have me thinking about how with adaptive challenges, a lot of the time, one of the things that makes them adaptive is that there are technical elements to them. So there may be things, I'm actually thinking about, as Wildcats Leadership for Life was starting to put together this mentoring program. Originally, we probably would have looked at it and said, hey, this is pretty technical. All we have to do is find some mentors, find some students, match them up, and we've got a mentoring program. And that was somewhat true. There were technical elements that we'd have to get an application out and do some things. But then once we got into it, the adaptive work really started to happen, where we started realizing, okay, we have to think of a process for engagement of alumni. We have to think of a process for engagement of students when, as alumni, a lot of us aren't even in that town anymore. And how do we do this? And how do we help people see this as important? That's definitely not technical. So there were elements of both, and that's what makes adaptive challenges, I think, even harder.
Right. You have to be willing to experiment, and having an environment or a culture that supports experimentation and failure at times. And that's why I showed Mike's syllabus, that Mike is experimenting with a course design that's new, but we're willing to experiment and let him design a course in a different way to see if that helps student learning. And it may not. We don't know. And so that's the idea with adaptive challenges, is that we don't know what's going to work until we try, until we run experiments. Okay, so
You have to share your screen.
oh, can you?
Minimize it.
I'm going to ask Shelly for some help, my technology person. I'm not sure what I did. I'm even challenging the tech person
There
here.
we go. Okay.
All right, thanks, Shelly. Okay, so that was going to be my question slide. I don't know if anybody remembers anybody here from 2002. That was our staff photo from 2002. Things have changed a little bit at Leadership Studies. Just a little. Okay, so one of the concepts is, as you think about these changes is in adaptive leadership, is they use the common language of being on the balcony and the dance floor. So when you look at your challenges, your adaptive challenge that you're spending a lot of time diagnosing, you're not quite even sure what the challenge is, you know it's adaptive, you definitely don't know what the solution is. You're going to have to run some experiments, but one of the general kind of terminology we use is that you have to be able to look at this adaptive challenge both from the balcony, meaning up high, 30,000 feet, or as my football metaphor, up in the press box and look down on it where you get the big view. And you have to look at it from the dance floor as well, which in this case is, you know, Colin Klein running the football and getting tackled. What's it look like when you're actually in that pile of bodies? You're on the dance floor. So your challenge looks differently when you're a coach sitting up here looking from the press box than when you're the quarterback running the football and you're in the middle of the pile. So you have to have multiple perspectives. And by the way, Colin Klein was in our program, and he couldn't play football at all before he started taking our classes. In fact, he almost quit football, but thanks to the leadership program, he was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. So, you know, we're feeling pretty good about that. Yeah, quarterback from an armchair. So actually, he was in our program. So what you have to do in adaptive leadership is you have your aspirations. You don't know how to get there. You're running a lot of experiments. So we talk about you have to observe the situation. Okay, what's happening? Then you have to make an interpretation. Why is it happening? Why is it happening? And then I have to experiment. I have to intervene. So I observe, I interpret, I intervene. And we're not done. It's an iterative cycle. We continue to do it. So Mike is running an experiment on course design this semester. It may work, it might not. So he's observing what's happening. He's interpreting. He intervened. He'll do it again. He'll make more observations, interpret that. He'll make more interventions. So it's a constant cycle. It's iterative. So in adaptive leadership, it's not as if, again, you have an expert come in and you say, this is what you need to do. You make the changes and you move on. You're constantly tweaking that system. You're constantly trying. And that's why you have to create a culture that's open to experimentation, open to failure, it could be, but also open to progress for the system. To do this, what you have to do is you have to be willing to experiment. And one of the things that we distinguish in this is that there is a huge difference between leadership and authority. If you're working in my circle here, whoops, I'm sorry. If you're working within my circle, my little fancy highlighter again. And your experiments are within here, that is within your authority. You're probably not going to make a lot of progress because you're not pushing the envelope, so to speak. Your experiments aren't risky. It's probably going to be the same old, same old. So what we want you to do is get out here where these stars are in adaptive leadership and try to intervene and run some experiments that are on the edge of your authority. Now, if you try to experiment where I have the X out here, that's way too far. People will push back. It's way too much change. So you have to figure out how far can you push your experiments to be on the edge. You don't want to have safe experiments. They need to be smart, but have the appropriate amount of risks. Because if you just operate within your given authority, things are probably going to stay the way they are. So that's what you have to figure out. How can I operate on the edge of my authority and make people uncomfortable? Okay, I'm learning. Woo, I got it. So this, going back to authority, it goes back to my Lily Tomlin quote. So somebody needs to do something about that. Well, that person is me. Because too often we want somebody else to do it, and we always think of sort of the person who has more authority than we do. Would somebody above me please make this change? So that doesn't make sense, and here's why. When we're thinking about adaptive challenges, if it's a technical problem, again, meaning the problem is known, the solution is known, authority can do that. But when it's not a technical problem, the authority figures cannot fix the problem. Experts can't come in and fix the problem. So this is where in adaptive leadership, we have to get used to this idea that the solution lies with those of us who have the problem, and that we have to run those smart experiments to get out of our comfort zone, to push our bounds of authority and run smart experiments. So you have to to push your bounds of authority and not rely on those with more authority than you do for the action. My final thought here is that you have to be used to disequilibrium, because doing adaptive work is uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you, it's uncomfortable. If you think back to that circle, if you act within your confines of authority, everything's fine. But to make progress, we've got to act on the edge of our authority, and that makes people very uncomfortable. So if you follow along with this green line, this is a technical problem, okay? The intensity is high, or the disequilibrium is high, but the authority or an expert can solve the problem, so the disequilibrium goes down, all right? With an adaptive challenge, the sort of blue-green line, disequilibrium stays high, and that's what we want it to stay. We don't want to lower the heat. And I don't know about some of you, but I'm really good at lowering the heat by using humor. I mean, when in a meeting, when intensity gets up a little bit, I'll crack a joke, I'll lower the heat, and that's a default I have to work on all the time, because if the whole room is feeling that heat, that probably means we're at the issue. And when I crack a joke, boom, the heat goes down, I let everybody off the hook, and we're not in disequilibrium enough to change. So disequilibrium, uncomfort is where we want to be. So I'm going to throw it back out for comments at this point, because I know we're just about out of time.
Mary Kay, something else that came to my mind as you were talking about this is the concept of an illusion of a broken system. And I remember that when I first started understanding adaptive leadership and thinking about the challenges that we were facing, that we were talking a lot about how, oh, well, if, of course this is broken, this isn't, I'm frustrated with this part, I'm thinking that this isn't going well. But the idea is that the system is designed to get the results that it's getting. So while I was complaining about the system, I wasn't realizing that everything we were doing was contributing to that. And so I might have to look at leadership by doing something different to try and maybe start to make that culture shift. So rather than looking at the system and blaming it, now I'm starting to recognize that maybe I need to understand why it's acting the way that it is, and what might be some small experiments to start making progress on that.
Right. So what we challenge our students to do is that they have to change their behavior. And we always talk about that their friends and their family, when they start acting adaptively, their friends and family are going to notice. And their friends are going to say, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" Because the friends are going to like the old person. But to make change, you have to change your behavior. And so in the system, when you change your behavior, people around you notice, and they're a little uncomfortable with that. But that's what we're going to ask our students to do. We do ask our students to do in leadership and practice. So I know we only have a couple more minutes. I want to go back for some comments. Oh, I showed that too soon. How about some comments? And why we might use this and how you might use this?
And don't forget to take yourself off of mute when you try to talk.
Mary Kay, it's Casey again. I'll just make a comment. I know a lot of people are on chat, and that's been really interesting to watch. But as a leader in my organization, I would say that, I've recognized as you've been talking that I need to make sure people feel comfortable to do this on my team, because I sat here and said, oh, I want them to. There's, again, not enough time in my day either, and to have my team thinking this way, benefits us all. And so you talked about making that space and allowing for those failures. That really struck me as important. Again, given the pace of the business world.
Right. So you have to create a culture for people to experiment.
Exactly.
How about some other comments? Well, if there are no other comments, I will share the part that I sneaked in earlier, since it's at 12:58. I want to thank you for attending and interacting. And we have recorded this. If you'd like my slide deck, I can certainly send that to you as well. I'm going to ask Amanda or Tamara, how shall we share this and the slides and so on?
Yes, I am going to email everyone who participated in the webinar today, and I'll include the link on the Leadership Studies website. We have a Wildcats Leadership for Life page there, and we will upload the audio and also upload the slide deck there. But I'll send you an email. The other thing we would love is some feedback about what else you might like in these webinars, who else you might like to hear from, how do we create a learning community that might continue on and benefit and help us all. I will do a little quick plug. On April 22nd at 1 p.m., we are going to try to welcome alumni into Town Hall, our large lecture hall where we teach Lead 212. Because at that time, President Kirk Schultz and First Lady Noel Schultz from K-State will be giving their leadership lecture to our freshmen, and they open it up for questions at the end, and we want to invite alumni to participate in that. So soon we'll be advertising for that once we get all of the technology details squared away. But we would love to hear from you after this too about what else interests you, what questions do you have, and what would be of value to you.
This is also the first time we've used this technology, as we mentioned, so if you had things you liked about it, things you didn't like about it, we would definitely love to hear that as well. I know that one of the things, if you are calling in, we don't have a way to know who you are, so if you don't receive that email message that Tamara was talking about, that would be why, because we can only see if you've logged in and given your name, so that's it.
I love, just one more comment, I love that Abdul is on this and he's driving. I don't know if I should love that or not, but I appreciate his dedication. Hi, Abdul. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.